I am so excited. This is April 6th. It is 12 o'clock Eastern Time, and I am so thrilled to be here, and I'm so thrilled that you are here as well. And let me just get things settled on this end so I can see things, and we're good. All right, you can see me. Perfect. All right, yay. All right, everyone. So we are going to start, and I am going to share with you some information today that, as you know, we've got this whole COVID-19 going on. We have a lot of fear. We have a lot of isolation. We have a lot of people that are trying to figure out, how do I be healthy? How do I not get this disease, right? That's what everyone's thinking. And yeah, so we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to share an entirely different perspective. This is a perspective from a physician. So this isn't something that's just, weird or woo-woo or anything. This is scientific biological information. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how do you make it so you stay healthy, and also how long is this going to all last, right? Everyone's wondering, when is this going to be over? So we'll talk about that as well. And I'm going to talk about how you can decrease your chances of being sick as well. All right, so how does that sound? Put it down in the comments. Let me know if that sounds pretty good. And if you have any questions, also let us know where you are. And I'm in the Eastern time zone, just so you know. Okay, yeah. And there's always a delay, so if I look at myself, it's like, all right, I'm still trying to get used to this whole Facebook Live thing. All right, so what I'm going to talk about today is a new perspective, and I'm going to tell you a story first. And this is a story that started in 1989 with a physician, a normal, traditionally trained physician from Germany, who was in his early 40s and was super healthy. And he had a phone call one day that his teenage son had been shot. And his son died in his arms 4 months later. You can imagine what that felt like for this physician. He couldn't save his own son. And a short time after that, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And so he's like, okay, I've always been so healthy, and then I have this huge trauma, and now I'm sick. There's got to be a correlation. So he eventually started looking at CT scans. This was the early 90s. And he was starting to think, there's something going on here that I want to explore this further. What caused this? What made this occur? And so he looked at CT scans. He worked at the University of Munich at that time. And he had everyone in the cancer ward where he lived. They all did CT scans. And he saw in each CT scan a circle like a bullseye, a lesion somewhere in their brain. Well, that was curious. Nobody could figure out what that meant. So he thought, well, I'm going to talk with them and see what's going on in their life, because he too had a circle in his brain. And he realized that all of them had had some sort of trauma prior to their diagnosis, some sort of distressing event. So then he thought, well, let's take this further. He took their medical histories as well, correlated all this information, and he realized that everyone with the circle in the same place in the brain had all experienced the same sort of trauma or distress prior to their diagnosis, and they all had the same diagnosis of cancer. Now, there were no exceptions to this. It was 100% accurate. And if you know anything about allopathic medicine, modern medicine, nothing is 100%, right? Does everyone who smokes have lung cancer? No. So it's not 100%. Therefore, smoking doesn't necessarily cause lung cancer. So there is a place for that. We can talk about that later if we have time. So let's see. So he started then on a journey, and he started to look at CT scans from people all over, and he correlated all of this information, and he mapped out the entire brain. So eventually, after a few years, he could determine from somebody's symptoms where the circle would be in the brain and what their diagnosis was. And he realized that all disease followed a two-phase cycle. So at the moment of this shock to our system, our innate intuitiveness takes over and says, uh-oh, this is a danger and we're hardwired for survival. So in order to survive this thing that just happened, let's say you just got laid off. And now you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm the breadwinner of my family. And that starts a circle in the brain. That circle starts a program. One of 3 programs begins instantly. You're conflict active. The first phase is being conflict active. You're upset about losing your job. And so your body, your innate intuitive sense, what we call the psyche, what Dr. Hammer calls the psyche, starts a program. It's either growing cells somewhere in your body to make a part of your body stronger so you can resolve this conflict, or we lose cells somewhere in our body because that also helps us throughout this to survive this whole incident that's occurred, or we have a functional loss. We lose functioning. Something's under functioning in our body because ultimately it helps us to survive this experience, which probably sounds super counterintuitive, but it's really not when you look at the whole system that he discovered. What he calls this are the 5 biological laws, and he calls it German New Medicine. All right, and that is what I teach. I have 2 online courses that you can learn all about this. So, and I've done a number of podcasts already and videos about the COVID-19 coronavirus. So I had mentioned the 2 phases. Once we have a conflict shock, we're now conflict active. We're growing cells, losing functioning somewhere in our body. That's helping us to survive. Once we've resolved the issue, now a few weeks later, we get another job. Okay, our nervous system switches, and now we're more relaxed about it because now we have a job, right? The conflict is resolved. If we grew cells for those 2 months we were conflict active, now we're going to break those down. There's pain, swelling, and inflammation with those. If we lost cells for those 2 months, we're going to replenish them. And if we lost functioning, now we're going to regain functioning. All of this is what we call being sick, and it's known in German New Medicine as the healing phase. So that's a brief overview of what Dr. Hammer discovered. What we know about the COVID-19 is, and I'm just looking down at some of the comments. Good to see you guys. Thanks so much for being here. This is awesome. Yay. And so COVID-19, like I said, Dr. Hammer figured out what every single program is that runs in the body. In other words, the cause of every disease. And what we know the COVID-19 is a territorial fear conflict. So if we have a territorial fear conflict, so there's something fearful in our environment, which is exactly what happened in Wuhan, China, with their government, then it starts the bronchial mucosa program. The territorial fear program starts cell loss in the bronchial mucosa, in bronchioles. We start losing cells in our bronchioles, literally. And that's to widen the passages so we can get more air into our body to help us survive. There's a biological purpose for every single one of these programs because we are hardwired for survival, and this is how. All right, so in the healing phase, the bronchial mucosa program would be called bronchitis. And that's super common. I've had bronchitis before. I know what that feels like. My husband's had it as well. The challenge, and where it gets a little more deadly, is when we have a second program running called the kidney collecting tubule program. And this is when we feel abandoned or isolated, or like we're a refugee, we're a fish out of water. And that's what happened with the folks in Wuhan, China. They felt like they had been neglected by their government. who was trying to increase the amount of pollution in their city, and they didn't want that, and there were protests and everything. The healing phase of that became the bronchitis, but with the kidney program as well, there's more fluid in that area that is healing. In other words, more fluid in the bronchioles and thus the whole chest. And that's what we call pneumonia. And of course, as we know, pneumonia can be something that is fatal. And that's why we always want to downgrade our conflicts so our healing phase is less intense. You can't prevent conflict shocks, right? Because they're unexpected. Well, you can't expect unexpected. It's not unexpected anymore, right? So we can't prevent it, but what we can recognize is when we're conflict active, we're fixated on it. We're upset about it. And you look at the number of people in the world right now that are fixated on the coronavirus, and they are just all of the news. That's all it's about. I just got my local paper yesterday, Sunday's paper, and every single article was about COVID-19 or how to work from home because, people are working from home now, or how to keep your kids happy because they're all at home, or here's the number of people who have died, of course, and things like that. So we're fixated on that. So many people are conflict active. And that's the slippery slope, because once it's resolved, there will be a healing phase. And that's what we're seeing around the world. When people are quarantined, they then feel safe. And we see this in Italy. I did a whole podcast on this, so go listen. I also did a YouTube video on it. So go listen, go watch. And about how in Italy, as the government put more restrictions on them, you can't go to sporting events, and now you can't go out of the house and all of that. That's when people started to feel safe because they think it's something they're going to catch. And of course, it's not, other than fear, but there's no viruses going around in our environment that we catch. And so once but they don't realize that, they think it's something they catch. So they feel like, okay, if I'm staying home, I can't catch it. Now they relax, the conflict resolves, and they go into their healing phase, which are when we have symptoms, and it's what we call being sick. So I had said earlier that we're going to talk about, are you afraid of getting sick, right? So what's the number one thing you can do right now? And it is to downgrade any sort of distress you feel about this. How do you downgrade it? Well, maybe don't watch the news and you think, oh, I have to be informed. No, because that's not accurate information. The media is designed to be sensationalized. They're all trying to outdo themselves with more dramatic information. It's not necessarily real. It's just a piece of news. And don't think that by listening to it, you are informed. You're not. Believe me, I don't listen to the news, and I'm perfectly informed with what's going on around me. All right, there are other ways to get your material, to get your information. So I would say don't watch the news. Don't be listening to all of I don't have a TV anyway, but if you have a TV and you watch the news, stop watching the news. Not real data, not real information. It's only a piece of what's going on in the world, a small piece. What I did on my website to counter this is on I think it's my Andy Lockmere's site, or check, it might be my BioHealth Works site, is I put right on the front page the number of people who have recovered, because that should be the news. That should be the news. The number of people who have recovered, which is far greater than the number of people who have passed. But what are they reporting on? Oh, they're reporting on the deaths, right? It's such a small piece of the news. Focus on the news that will make it so you're not conflict active. That's the number one thing you can do. Relax your nervous system about all of this. There is nothing to catch. I just put on my website a wonderful video that's now circulating around of Dr. Andrew Kaufman, who's an American psychiatrist. So he's an MD, and his 2 hours about explaining what COVID really is from, a medical perspective. Again, it's not what you see on the news. The news is not real. All right. What's real is what Dr. Kaufman said. So go and listen to that. It's really important that you do. Share that with other folks as well. And focus on love and gratitude, Natalie. Absolutely. At a perfect. This is good. Great to see you all. So don't focus on the news because it's not real, right? It's a small piece of the news, and yet it makes it sound like this is all there is, and it's not. Watch my website. Look at the number of people who have recovered. I put a new number up every day. And so you focus on, wow, look at all these people who are in recovery, who have recovered from this and are fine, because that is the vast majority of people, but that's not what we're hearing on the news, right? So that's one of the biggest things you can do to keep yourself from being conflict active about this. When we are conflict active, we will have a healing phase. Downgrade it all now, and your healing phase will be minimal. It'll be much more minimal, which is perfect. And let's see. So that's how you can decrease your chances of being sick. Number one. Yes, eat a good diet. That's important. What does a good diet do? It keeps our body full of energy. And when we have energy, we can more easily make it through a healing phase. Versus if we're eating a lot of junk, our body doesn't have resiliency. It doesn't have vital energy. Vital energy is what we need to make it through that healing phase. So that's important. Eat well, knowing that you're simply keeping your body strong. Eating well does not prevent disease, because diseases are all designed to help us survive. Instead of the word disease, we use the word program. We are all programmed the same way. In other words, we are all hardwired the same way. Cats and dogs as well. It's not a mystery as to why one person gets a certain disease versus another person. That's a whole other story. All right, so how long, one of the questions I get is, how long is this going to last? Well, that's a great question. So just know that we have a conflict shock, and now we have a conflict active phase. That conflict active phase might last for 2 seconds. It might last for 2 months. It might last for 20 years, right? So the healing phase will be in proportion to that, and it will be a little bit more. So you can't say, if I'm conflict active for 2 hours, my healing phase will be exactly 3 hours. It doesn't really work like that. Someday we'll have this data and we'll know how long, but we don't have that quite yet. There's a lot of speculation. There's some really great formulas out there, and we don't have the full formula to figure that out yet. So what we know is that the more conflict active you are, the more intense and complicated your healing phase will be. So the more you can downgrade it, get your nervous system relaxed, then the easier your healing phase will be. And you may not have had a conflict shock with this at all, which means you won't have a healing phase. I haven't had a conflict shock. I have absolutely no fear. I've not been fixated on it. Don't have cold hands and feet, which is another indication that you're conflict active. Haven't had any of that, so I'm not going to have a healing phase. I'm pretty certain about that. So again, how long is this going to last? You're going to see this cycle, and you saw it in China. We saw a lot of people go into the healing phase around the same time, and that's normal because this group of people resolved their issue around the same time. They go into healing around the same time, and then the whole program runs its course, and then it's done a few weeks later, as long as there's no conflict relapses. We're seeing now in the news that there's now been a slight upsurge in, I get the news even though I don't read it. There's been a slight upsurge in cases in China. So people are now, if it's their second time getting sick, they've had a conflict relapse. Get out of conflict, stay out of conflict. Relax your nervous system in any way that you can. Drink some chamomile tea. Take a walk. Engage with friends through, your phone or however you can. Focus on home projects. I know that's what my husband and I have been doing a lot of lately. Anything to distract your mind from focusing on COVID-19. So like I said, it's going to run its course in everyone. And as long as there's no conflict relapses, once somebody's done with that healing phase, then they're done. And you will notice that the people who are passing are the ones who are usually older because their bodies are weaker. They don't have the vital energy that I mentioned earlier that we have when we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I'm going to say. And as we get older, the vital energy changes, and that's why they are more susceptible, that they're more apt to pass than if somebody who's 40 has the same thing, they're not apt to pass. Okay. Let's see. You want to get back to your regular life as soon as you can. So you want to do that on a daily basis now within your parameters, and don't focus on, I can't go to the clothing store now. I can't go shoe shopping. Shift it all. Don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on all the great things you can do. And we have the gift of time right now. We have time to do this because people aren't out there with their usual jobs. I have a neighborhood, a wonderful neighborhood here, and we have a greenway that's at the edge of it that people can ride their bikes on. It's a beautiful path, paved, that they walk on and bike on and walk their dogs, and it's right next to a beautiful brook. We've had more people on that greenway riding their bikes, whole families, than I've ever seen before. And we can still get outside here. I'm in Western North Carolina, and they want us to get out and exercise, even though they've closed a lot of the parks, trying to figure that one out. But so many people have been out there, and I see families together like I never did before. So I think there is a wonderful silver lining here. And I hope that this is helping us to kind of reprioritize the things that we do in our life. So I invite you to look at that in your life as well. So keep yourself uplifted on a daily basis. Look at what you're telling yourself, because if you're telling yourself negative stuff, you're more apt to have a conflict shock than someone who's just focusing on positive things and on things that are within their control. That's really important. Let me see if I've got any questions down here. Yeah, people are putting in the things that they are doing, and I think that's great. And that's super. Cheryl, I'm so glad that's helping. Yeah, check your cold hands and feet. That is an indication that, you're conflict active. I mean, unless you live in Maine and it's wintertime, right? Then, and you're outside and it's 5 degrees. So, of course, we know that you're going to be cold then. But this is different. This is when you're inside or everyone around you is warm and you're cold. Okay, what are you thinking about? You are conflict active. So, yeah, I'm looking at the comments. Oh, this is great. I love it. So glad you're all here with me. And perfect. Okay, good. So let me see. Are there any questions? Although I can't see all the comments for some reason. I'll figure out Facebook eventually, folks. Let me make sure that I've covered everything I want to cover. So if you feel isolated, okay, let's talk about isolation. Okay, first let's back up. Territorial fear conflict is the bronchial mucosa program. In the healing phase, we call it bronchitis. So if you're feeling fear, downgrade that. Downgrade that any way that you can. Focus on the positive of your life instead. Focus on the fact that there's nothing to catch, because there isn't. Go watch Dr. Kaufman, like I mentioned. I did put that on my website on the COVID page. So look for that. If you're feeling isolated, that's the kidney collecting tubule program. Feeling abandoned. I can't see my friends. fear of being abandoned, fear of isolation. That also works. Fear of fear of territorial issues that aren't there yet, but might be coming. Oh my gosh, they're going to start cracking down on us. We're not going to be able to leave our house. And having the fear of all of these can start this program, either of the programs as well. Fear of isolation. So you want to stay connected any way you can. Make daily phone calls with your loved ones. Do FaceTime with them so you see them, and talk to your psyche. Look, I'm seeing my loved one. I'm not isolated at all. Be very practical with how you approach this. You have a lot of power right now. You have a lot more power and control over your life than you realize. Stop listening to the no's because it's not real, and start looking at what you do have control over in your life right now, which are basically your thoughts and your actions. And focus on those. Focus on keeping them positive and on focusing on things that are really advantageous for your life right now. What a wonderful opportunity we have right now to get home projects done. This is great. Reframe it any way you need to in your brain so that it calms your nervous system so you can sleep as well. Oh, I see the comments over here, I think. Still figuring this out. Okay, this is awesome. Oh my gosh, now I can see it all. Okay. The news has commercials. Commercials aren't real, right? It's all marketing. It's all marketing. So, yep, go to the Worldometer, and what I do is I just take the statistic from Worldometer of the number of recovered, and I put that on my website because that's really the number we want to be looking at. It is the most important number to be focusing on if you're trying to stay out of fear, okay? That's really important to me, important for all of us. Let's see. Good. Yeah, check out the resources. I'm adding them all the time and making changes to them all the time as well. I did have a video up I put down because the one I put up is much more relevant. And I just put the link. I didn't want to put it on there, the whole video, because that's bandwidth on my website. So, Karina, good to see you. Yay. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me make sure that I covered. Yeah, if you're feeling frustrated with the restrictions in your life, reframe it. What a wonderful opportunity for me to now get rearrange my closet. Shift your focus any way you can. That is so important. So one of the best things you can do that will stay with you for the rest of your life is to learn German New Medicine on a deeper level. If you've never heard of it before, then learn it as much as you can. I teach it on my website. And if you know it to a degree, deepen your knowledge of it. And so check out my biohealthworksinstitute.com website. Oh, I suppose I can put that in here, right? Let me see if I can. I can. I know you Facebook people are laughing at me right now. biohealthworksinstitute.com. Go check out. I think I just put it out there. Yeah, go check that out. Oh, there it is. Go check out. I've got my basic course. I am doing a sale on it, but the sale, if you want the sale price, which is 30% off, I have never done 30% off before. And you get 6 months of live teleconferences every week. You get me live every week. So sort of like this, but we'd see each other. I could see you and answer your questions in real time, which is super important, especially when you're trying to shift your brain about, viruses don't exist. They do not. And it takes a while to kind of understand that. So I definitely recommend taking my course. Of course, I'm going to say this, but 30% off. And so the coupon for that is No More Fear. And I'm going to write that in here, No More Fear. And that is that's the coupon code to get 30% off. So join it. I and join my weekly teleconferences. So it's awesome. I also, if you are a holistic practitioner, please forward this video or wherever you do it on Facebook to holistic practitioners in your life, all right? So that they can start to learn a new perspective as well. They can then reframe their modalities to be more effective. Whether it's acupuncture, nutrition, health coaching, naturopath, herbalist, everyone can benefit from learning German New Medicine. And truly, working with practitioners is what I love to do. And I have a whole practitioner course that will be starting in mid-May. And so that is starting to fill up already. So, all right. I think that's all I was going to cover today. Thank you so much for being with me. Check out my websites. I'll put my other one in down here. My other one, check that out as well. I am switching them over. They will all of my pages will be on andylockmears.com soon. And I'm doing away with BioHealthWorks Institute. So if you ever go there and it's gone, you'll be directed to Andy Lockmears. But all of that takes legwork, and I haven't had any time because of coronavirus. So hope to see you soon. Hope to see you in my course. Remember, 30% off. That's only good for the next till the end of this month. So sign up now if you're able to. That would be great. And learn this on a much more detailed level and get support for that as well. Blessings to all of you. I'm so glad you joined me today. This was super fun. And I see people coming in from all over. My gosh, thank you so much for being here. And pass this on to folks, however you do that in Facebook. I'm sure you all know how to do that. So, all right, I'm going to end it now. Love, love, love to see you all in my course. And thanks for joining me. I'll do some more Facebook Lives as we go. And because I want to support all of you and show you that there is another way. And that other way is really important to learn. All right, take care. We'll see you next time.